I was driving back from a weekend trip along the coast, taking the long route because I wanted to see the water before the light went completely. The road was empty in that particular way coastal roads get in early autumn. Not abandoned, just quiet, like everyone else had somewhere warmer to be. The sun was already low, throwing this orange-gold light across the cliffs on my right. And the ocean was that deep navy color it turns right before dusk. I had the windows cracked, music low, and honestly, I felt good, relaxed. The kind of drive where your mind just empties out. About 40 minutes into that stretch, I saw him on the shoulder. A man, maybe late 30s, standing with one hand half raised, not really waving, more like he was just acknowledging that a car was coming. He had a backpack slung over one shoulder and was wearing a jacket that looked too heavy for the weather. There was nothing dramatic about him. No sign, no desperate gesturing. If anything, he looked almost bored, like he'd been standing there a while and had stopped expecting anyone to stop. I want to be honest. I don't usually pick up hitchhikers. I think most people don't, not anymore. But something about the stretch of road, how isolated it was, and the fact that the next town was at least 20 minutes out, made me feel like leaving him there felt wrong. So I slowed down and pulled onto the shoulder. He walked over without rushing, opened the door, and said, "Thank you." I wasn't sure anyone would stop out here. His voice was calm, pleasant even. He had an accent I couldn't quite place. Not foreign exactly, just slightly off, like someone who'd spent a long time somewhere far from where they grew up. He got in, set his bag between his feet, and we pulled back onto the road. For the first few minutes, it was completely normal. He asked where I was headed. I told him, and he said that was close enough to where he needed to go. We talked about the weather, how the light was nice this time of day, normal small talk. I remember feeling fine, comfortable, even. He had this calm presence that made the car feel less empty. Then, he said something that made me glance over at him. He asked, "Do you always take this road when you're feeling like you need to think things through?" It was such a strange thing to say. I laughed it off, said something like, "I guess I do take this route when I want some quiet." But internally I was a little thrown. It wasn't a wrong guess. I genuinely had taken this route because I had a lot on my mind that week. But it wasn't something I'd said out loud. Not to him, not to anyone in the car. I figured maybe it was just a lucky guess. The kind of thing people say that happens to land right. We kept driving. The light kept fading, and I turned the headlights on. He was quiet for a bit, looking out the window, and then he said, almost casually, "You're going to second-guess this decision a lot." Not today, but later. I asked him what he meant, trying to keep my tone light like it was just conversation. He just said, "You'll understand when it happens." People usually do, eventually. At this point, I started to feel a small knot form in my stomach. Not fear exactly. More like that feeling when someone says something that's just slightly too specific, too knowing, and you can't tell if it's a coincidence or not. I told myself he was just one of those people who talk in vague, philosophical riddles. Some people are like that. It didn't necessarily mean anything. We drove past a turnoff, one I knew led toward a small overlook where people sometimes stopped to watch the sunset. I almost didn't think about it, but he said, "You thought about stopping there once, with someone." That one hit different, because it was true. There was a time, years ago, when I'd thought about stopping at that overlook with someone I cared about, and never did. I never told anyone that. It was just a passing thought I'd had once, alone, in this exact spot, years before. I didn't say anything for a moment. The silence in the car suddenly felt different, heavier. Somehow, I glanced at him, and he was just looking forward, completely relaxed, like none of this was unusual. I tried to brush it off. I told myself maybe I'd mentioned it once to a friend and forgot, or maybe it was one of those things that's common enough that lots of people think it at that exact spot. People romanticize over looks. It's not that unusual. But then, he said something that I still think about. He said, "You're going to remember this drive for a long time. Not because of me, because of what happens after." I asked him, "After what?" He just smiled slightly and said, "You'll know it when it happens. It won't feel like anything special at first." By this point, it was fully dark outside, and the headlights were the only real light on the road, carving out this narrow tunnel of visibility, while everything else disappeared into black. I remember feeling very aware of how alone we were. No other cars, no lights from houses, nothing. He didn't say anything else for a while. He just looked out the window, completely calm, like he was enjoying the drive. I kept stealing glances at him, trying to read something in his expression, but there was nothing there. No malice, no tension, just ease. Like he'd done this before. Like this was routine for him. Eventually, we reached the point where he said he needed to get out. A stretch of road that, as far as I could tell, had nothing around it. No town, no turnoff, no lights in the distance. Just road and darkness on either side. I asked him, half joking, half genuinely curious, "Are you sure this is where you wanted to go? There's nothing out here." He looked at me, and for the first time, his expression shifted slightly. Not into anything scary, just into something more thoughtful, almost sad. He said, "It's exactly where I need to be. You'll understand that too, eventually." He thanked me again, got out, and shut the door gently. I watched him in my side mirror as I pulled away. He didn't walk toward anything. He just stood there on the shoulder, in the dark, watching my car go. After a few seconds, the mirror showed nothing but black. I drove the rest of the way home in this strange, unsettled headspace. I kept replaying the conversation in my mind, trying to make sense of it. Eventually, I convinced myself it was just one of those bizarre, random encounters. The kind of thing that happens sometimes, especially on long, quiet drives, where strangers say odd things and you never see them again. I didn't think about it again for a few months. Then, about 4 months later, I went through something. A major decision. A complete shift in direction in my life. The kind of thing that completely reorients everything around it. I won't get into details, but it was the kind of moment where, afterward, you look back at your life and realize there's a clear before and after. And one night, lying awake after everything had happened, it hit me. I sat up in bed, and I felt this cold wave wash over me, because I suddenly remembered, clearly, vividly, what he'd said in the car. "You're going to remember this drive for a long time. Not because of me, because of what happens after. You'll know it when it happens. It won't feel like anything special at first." And it hadn't. The day everything changed had felt completely ordinary. Just like any other day, until it wasn't. I went back later and looked up that stretch of road on a map. Trying to figure out exactly where I dropped him off. I wanted to see if there was anything out there. A trail. A house hidden somewhere. Anything that could explain why someone would be standing in that exact spot. There was nothing. No paths, no structures, nothing for miles in either direction. Just road. I still drive that route sometimes. I haven't seen him again, but every time I pass that stretch, that exact stretch where I dropped him off, I find myself slowing down, just a little, glancing at the shoulder. I don't know what I'm expecting to see. I just know that somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm still waiting for the next thing he said to come true. We were about 3 hours into the drive up through the mountains, and I was in the back seat with my headphones half on, half off, just watching the snow pile up along the edges of the road. It was one of those long family road trips where everyone settles into their own little bubble. Dad driving, Mom navigating even though the GPS was working fine, and me just existing in the back, half asleep, half bored. The pass was narrow, 2 lanes with these tall pine trees on either side that were so loaded with snow they looked almost fake, like a movie set. Visibility wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. That flat, gray winter light where everything looks slightly washed out. We got stuck behind this line of cars pretty early on. Not a big deal at first. Just a slow-moving group, a couple of SUVs, a van, what looked like a small RV, maybe 6 or 7 vehicles total, all going about 10 under the speed limit. Dad muttered something about people being cautious because of the snow, and honestly, that made sense. Mountain roads, winter, slower traffic, totally normal. I remember looking up from my phone after a while and noticing we were still behind them. Same vehicles, same order. The SUV in front of us had a faded sticker on the back window. Some kind of family decal, stick, figures, that sort of thing. And I'd noticed it earlier. It was still right there, exact same spot, same distance ahead of us. Dad, can you pass them? I asked, mostly because I was getting restless. There's nowhere to pass, he said. Road's too narrow here. We'll get a chance further up. That made sense too. I went back to my phone. But then, and this is where it started feeling different, we hit a long straightaway. The kind of stretch where, normally, at least someone would speed up, pull ahead, create some space. Dad even sped up a little, like he was testing it. And the line of cars ahead of us sped up too, exactly enough to keep the same distance. Not obviously, not in a way that would make you go, hey, that's weird, right away. But I was watching that sticker on the SUV, and it stayed in the exact same spot relative to us the entire straightaway. I didn't say anything. I just kept watching. We hit a passing zone, actual dashed yellow lines, a sign that said passing lane ahead. Dad pulled into it, accelerated, and started to move past the line of cars. I watched out my window as we crept past the RV, then a sedan, then a van, and then the passing lane ended. Just ended. Earlier than the sign indicated, like maybe 100 feet short of where it should have. Dad had to merge back in, and we ended up right back in the same position, same spot in line. Like we'd passed 3 cars and somehow ended up exactly where we started. That's annoying, Mom said, not really alarmed, just mildly irritated. Felt like that lane ended really fast. Yeah, Dad said, frowning slightly. Felt shorter than the sign said. I sat up a little straighter. Something about that comment, the fact that they noticed something was off too, made the knot in my stomach tighten just slightly. I told myself it was nothing. Maps and signs are wrong sometimes. Construction changes things. Whatever. We kept driving. The snow was getting heavier now. Big fat flakes drifting down, and the light was starting to fade. Not full dark yet, but that flat, dim, late afternoon gray that makes everything feel slower, heavier. I noticed something else. Something small. The RV in front of the SUV. It had its taillights on, obviously, since visibility was dropping. But I realized I'd been staring at those taillights for a while, and they hadn't flickered. Not once. No brake lights, even when the road curved, and everyone else's lights flared briefly with the turn. Just 2 steady red dots. perfectly consistent, like they were painted on. I leaned forward between the front seats. "Hey, has anyone in front of us, braked at all?" Mom turned slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we've been behind these cars for like an hour, and I don't think I've seen any of their brake lights come on. Not on the curves, not anything." There was a pause. Dad glanced in the rear view, then forward again. "Huh, you're right. That is weird. That, huh, that small, almost dismissive sound somehow made it worse. Because it meant he'd noticed it too, just hadn't said anything, the same way I hadn't. We came to another passing opportunity. This one longer, clearly marked, no ambiguity. Dad didn't hesitate this time. He pulled out fast, gunned it, and we shot past the RV, the van, the sedan, all of them in quick succession. I was twisted around in my seat, watching out the back window, half expecting them to speed up like before. They didn't. They just continued. Same speed, same spacing between each other, not reacting to us passing at all. No one slowed down to let us in. No one sped up to block us. Nothing. It was like they didn't register that we were there. We were finally ahead, properly ahead, with actual distance between us and the line of cars behind. I felt this immediate physical relief, like a held breath finally let out. Dad merged back into the right lane, comfortable now, putting distance between us and them. "Finally," Mom said, and even her voice sounded lighter. For maybe 10 minutes, everything felt normal again. The road was empty ahead of us, snow falling as steadily, mountains on either side getting darker as the light dropped further. I put my headphones back on properly, relaxed a little. Then Dad slowed down. "What's wrong?" Mom asked. "There's a checkpoint or something up ahead," he said. "Lights." I looked up. Through the windshield, I could see red and blue lights flashing in the distance, reflecting off the snow, off the trees. That distinctive pattern. Emergency vehicle lights. As we got closer, I could see shapes pulled over on the shoulder. Several vehicles, lined up, hazards on, lights flashing around them. It took me a second to recognize them. The SUV with the sticker, the van, the RV, the sedan we'd passed. All of them. Every single vehicle from that line pulled over, on the shoulder. Engines clearly still running based on the exhausts visible in the cold air. Hazard lights blinking in unison. But there were no people. No drivers standing outside, no one walking around, no flashlight beams, nothing. Just the vehicles themselves, lined up perfectly evenly spaced, lights flashing, engines running, completely empty as far as I could see through the snow-streaked windows. "Did they break down?" Mom said, but her voice had changed, quieter. Dad didn't answer. He just slowed down further. And as we passed, and I mean really slowly passed, all of us staring, I could see into a couple of the vehicles. The RV's side door was open, just slightly, swinging gently with some unfelt movement. The sedan's interior light was on, illuminating an empty front seat, a phone sitting face up on the dashboard, screen lit. No one called out. No one ran toward us. The hazards just kept blinking, perfectly in sync with each other, all the way down the line. Dad didn't stop. I don't think any of us wanted him to. He just kept driving, a little faster than before, and none of us said anything for a long time. Eventually, Mom said quietly, "We should call someone. Report that." "Report what?" Dad said. His voice was strange, flat, controlled. "That a bunch of cars pulled over with their hazards on? People do that all the time. Their doors were open. No one was." "I know," he said, and that was it. He didn't finish the thought. We drove the rest of that pass in almost complete silence. No music, no talking. Just the sound of the tires on the snow, and the wipers going back and forth. I kept glancing at the side mirror, half expecting to see those flashing lights catching up behind us. But there was nothing, just dark road, falling snow, and our own headlights cutting through it. We made it to the other side of the mountains. A while later, to a small town with actual street lights and gas stations and people. We stopped for gas, and nobody said much beyond the basics. Pump numbers, snack requests, normal things. It was like there was this unspoken agreement that we weren't going to talk about it. We never did, actually. Not that night, not the next day, not since. It's been a few years now, and as far as I know, none of us have ever brought it up to each other again. I don't know if Mom and Dad think about it the way I do. Maybe they've convinced themselves it was something explainable, a weird optical thing with the snow, some local incident we just didn't understand. But I still think about those taillights. How steady they were. How none of those vehicles ever reacted to anything. Not to us passing. Not to the curves in the road. Not to whatever made them all pull over at the exact same time, in a perfect, even line, with their hazards blinking like nothing at all was wrong. We don't take that route anymore. Whenever we go up to the mountains now, we take the longer way around, even though it adds almost 2 hours to the drive. Nobody's ever said why out loud, but nobody's ever suggested the other way either. I take the same toll road home every night. Same exit, same lanes, same routine I've done for almost 6 years. You stop noticing things after that long. The road becomes background noise. That night I left work later than usual, closer to 11 than 10. Because of some last-minute deadline that, looking back, I can't even remember the details of anymore. Traffic was basically non-existent. Late winter, cold enough that the road crews had been out salting earlier. So, there were these faint white streaks under the streetlights, but no ice, nothing dramatic. Just an empty industrial corridor, warehouses and chain-link fences on either side. Sodium lights overhead giving everything that flat orange tint. I had the radio on low, some late-night talk station, mostly for noise. I remember thinking, not for the first time, how strange it is that a road can feel completely different at 11 at night versus 5 in the evening. Same asphalt, same signs, but it's like a different place entirely. About 15 minutes from home, I came up on the toll plaza, except it wasn't the toll plaza. I want to be clear about this. I've driven through that exact toll plaza probably 4,000 times. Open lanes, transponder readers on poles, no booths, no staff, hasn't had actual toll collectors since they automated it years ago. I know that stretch of road the way you know your own hallway in the dark. But there, ahead of me, lit up by my headlights, was a booth. An actual physical booth, sitting in the middle of what should have been an open lane. Old style, the kind with a little overhang roof, a window, a sign I couldn't read yet. My first thought wasn't fear. It was just mild confusion, the kind you get when something's slightly out of place. Like coming home and finding your furniture rearranged. I slowed down, assuming maybe it was construction, some kind of temporary setup. Maybe the automated system was down, and they'd put out an emergency booth. That happens, technically. Not often, but it happens. I pulled up to it. The window was lit from inside. A dim, yellowish light, the kind old fluorescent bulbs give off when they're dying. I could see a shape behind the glass, but the glass itself had this strange texture to it, almost frosted, even though there was no reason for condensation given how cold it was outside versus presumably warm inside. I rolled down my window. Cold air came in immediately, sharper than I expected. "Evening," I said, mostly out of habit. People say things to toll booth operators, even when they're barely paying attention to them. No response. But a hand extended out from the booth's window, gloved, dark material, holding out what I assumed was a card reader or a slot for payment. I didn't have cash. I never carry cash anymore. Who does? I started to say something about that, about the transponder, about how this lane shouldn't even require manual payment, but the hand just stayed there, waiting. Patient in a way that felt slightly off, like it would wait there indefinitely if it had to. I checked my cup holder out of pure reflex. Sometimes there's loose change in there from drive-thrus, and found a coin. I want to describe this coin carefully, because I've thought about it a lot since. It wasn't a quarter, or anything close to a quarter. It was heavier than it should have been for its size, almost uncomfortably dense, like it was made of something other than standard coin metal. The color was wrong too. Not silver, not copper, more like a dull pewter gray, almost matte, like it absorbed light instead of reflecting it. There were markings on it, but in the dim light I couldn't make out what they were. Not numbers, not letters I recognized. Just shapes. Worn down, like the coin was old, but also somehow looked untouched, like it had never actually been handled before despite the wear. I genuinely don't know where it came from. I checked my cup holder maybe a week earlier, and there was nothing in there but a gum wrapper, but it was there. And the hand was waiting. And honestly, at 11 at night, alone on an empty road, with a gloved hand extended out of an impossible booth, I just wanted this interaction to be over. I put the coin in the gloved hand. The hand withdrew. No words, no receipt, no gate arm lifting, because there wasn't a gate arm to begin with. There never had been on this road. The booth's window light flickered once, the way old fluorescents do right before they either stabilize or die completely, and then it just stayed lit, steady. I sat there for a second, not entirely sure what I was supposed to do next. Then, slowly, I just drove forward, and the booth was gone. Not behind me, gone. Gone in the sense that when I checked my rearview mirror about 2 seconds later, there was nothing there. No structure, no light, no overhang. Just the open road stretching back into darkness. The same toll plaza and configuration I'd driven through thousands of times. Open lanes, transponder poles, nothing else. I kept driving. I didn't stop. I think on some level I made a very quick, very practical decision. Whatever that was, I wasn't going to solve it by pulling over on an empty industrial road at 11 at night. I'd deal with it later. Or not at all. I got home about 15 minutes after that, same as always. Parked in my driveway, sat in the car for a minute longer than usual, then went inside. Made tea. Sat at the kitchen table. Tried to just not think about it too hard. But here's the thing that actually got to me. Not the booth, not the coin. What got to me was later, when I checked my phone. I have one of those apps that logs your drives automatically. Mileage tracking thing for work expenses. It records start time, end time, route, total duration. I'd left work, and the app had logged my departure time, as it always does. The drive home that night, same route, same distance, same everything, was logged as taking 51 minutes. It normally takes 40. I sat there staring at that number for a long time. 40 minutes is what it's been every single day for 6 years, give or take, a minute or two depending on lights. 51 minutes is not a margin of error. It's not, oh, I hit more red lights than usual. That's an extra 11 minutes, on a route with basically no traffic, where I didn't stop anywhere. except I had stopped somewhere. For something. I went back and checked the app's route map. It shows a little line tracing your path. The line was completely normal. Same roads, same toll plaza, no detours, no stops marked. Just a straight, unbroken path from work to home. 11 minutes, just gone. Unaccounted for. On a road I've driven thousands of times, with a duration that's never varied by more than a couple of minutes in either direction. I didn't sleep great that night, not because I was scared, exactly, more because I kept running the math. 11 minutes. Where do 11 minutes go? You can't misplace 11 minutes. Time doesn't just not happen. The next day, I drove the same route home, same time, on purpose. I wanted to see the toll plaza in daylight, partly to reassure myself, partly because some part of me needed to check. It was exactly what it's always been. Open lanes, transponder poles. No booth, no overhang, nothing. I even pulled over briefly, which you're not supposed to do, but there was no traffic, and looked at the shoulder where the booth had been. Just asphalt. A faint discoloration, maybe, but that could have been anything. Oil stain, old paint, who knows. The drive that day logged at 39 minutes. Normal. Maybe even a minute under normal. I still drive that road every night. I haven't seen the booth again. I've started carrying cash now, though. Just a few coins, loose change, sitting in the cup holder. I tell myself it's for parking meters, or in case I need to tip someone, something practical like that. But if I'm being honest, it's not really for that. It's in case I need it again. In case the booth comes back, and the hand reaches out, and I need something to give it that isn't whatever that gray coin was. Because I don't have that coin anymore. I checked. It wasn't in the cup holder afterward. It wasn't anywhere in the car. I don't know what would happen if the hand reached out again, and I had nothing to give it. I'd rather not find out. So I keep the change there. A few coins, rattling quietly in the cup holder every night as I drive home, just in case 11 minutes ever needs to happen again, and this time, I want to be ready to pay for them. I needed gas anyway, so when the rest stop sign came up, blue lettering, half a bulb out, I took the exit without really thinking about it. The lot was empty. One sodium light at the far end flickering. My car, alone, under the brighter light near the building. Heat still radiating off the asphalt, even at this hour. That thick desert warmth that doesn't go away just because the sun did. I sit there for a second before getting out, just listening. Engine off, AC fading, that ringing kind of silence settling in. Nothing. Just crickets, somewhere far off. I go in. The building's one of those concrete block ones. Vending machines humming against one wall. A map under cracked plastic, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. 2 doors at the end. Men's, women's. I push through into the women's side. It's small. 2 stalls, sinks along one wall, mirror with a crack running diagonally across it. I check. Both stalls empty. Doors hanging slightly open. I go into the one farther from the entrance, latch it, and just stand there for a second before sitting down. I'm tired. That's the main thing I remember thinking. Just tired, ready to get back on the road, get this part over with. Then, I hear the door. The main bathroom door, the one I came through, it opens. I hear it swing. Hear the little pneumatic hiss it makes, then the soft thud of it closing. Footsteps, slow ones, moving across the tile. I don't think anything of it at first. People stop at rest areas. That's the whole point of them. I just sit there, waiting for whoever it is to go into the other stall, or the sink, whatever. The footsteps stop, not at the sink. Not at the other stall. Right outside mine. I can see the shadow under the gap at the bottom of the door, feet, facing my stall, not moving past. Just there. I stay still. I don't know why. Some instinct just tells me not to move, not to make a sound. Like if I'm quiet enough, this will just resolve itself. The person will realize they're standing in front of an occupied stall and move along. They don't move along. And then I hear it. My own voice. Coming from the other stall. Not from outside my door. From inside the other stall, the one I checked. The one that was empty. It's saying something. Quiet. Just barely audible over the hum of the fluorescent lights. I can't make out words at first, just the tone of it. And that's somehow worse, because I recognize the tone immediately. I recognize it because it's mine. The cadence, the pitch, that specific way my voice catches slightly when I'm tired. I sit there, frozen, straining to hear, telling myself I'm wrong, that it's just an echo, that bathrooms do weird things with sound. And then I catch actual words. Don't think anyone's coming. That's a sentence I said, out loud, in my car, 20 minutes ago, to myself, when I was deciding whether to bother stopping here at all. Probably fine. Don't think anyone's coming through here this late. I said that, alone in my car, with the windows up. The feet outside my door haven't moved. My own voice continues, from the other stall, low, almost a murmur. Like someone playing a recording very quietly, deliberately quiet. Just loud enough for me to hear if I'm listening hard. And I am listening hard, because some part of my brain has locked onto this and won't let go. Just need gas. Almost home anyway. That's another thing I said, in the car, to myself. I don't move. I don't breathe, it feels like. My phone is in my bag, which is hanging on the hook on the back of the door, maybe 8 inches from the head of whoever is standing outside. I can't reach it without making noise. The feet outside the door shift, just slightly. A small adjustment of weight, like someone settling in to wait. The voice, my voice, keeps going, from the other stall. Different now. Not things I said in the car, things I haven't said yet. Things I'm thinking, right now, sitting here. Should have just kept driving. I am thinking that. Right now. That exact thought. In that exact moment. Just played my own thought back to me half a second after I had it. In my own voice, from an empty stall 3 feet away. I don't know how long I sit there. It feels like a long time. The feet outside don't move. The voice doesn't stop. It just keeps narrating, soft and steady, every thought as I have it, a half second behind, like some kind of delay. If I just wait, maybe they'll leave. I have to get out of here, each one, right after I think it, like clockwork. Like something is listening to the inside of my head and saying it back to me, quietly, patiently, from 3 feet away, in my own voice. I don't know what makes me move. I think it's just that staying still stopped being an option. Some threshold got crossed, and my body just acted before I told it to. I unlatched the door, fast. I don't look at the other stall. I don't let myself look. I just grab my bag off the hook and shove past whatever's standing there, not looking at it, not looking at anything except the exit door. And I'm moving, and the fluorescent lights is buzzing, and the floor is sticky under my shoes. And I hit the door with both hands and I'm outside, in the heat, in the dark, and I don't stop. I don't look back at the building. I don't check the other stall. I don't check who was standing outside my door. I don't look at anything except my car, and I'm in it, and the doors are locked, and I'm pulling out of that lot so fast the tires actually chirp on the asphalt, which I've never done in my life. I drive for probably 20 minutes before I let myself breathe normally. Windows up, doors locked, music off because I don't want any sound in the car except the road. And that's when it hits me. The thing that stuck with me more than anything else. The voice wasn't behind me. It wasn't trailing my thoughts. It was a half second ahead. Every single time, just before I consciously finished forming the thought, I have to get out of here. The voice had already said it. Like it knew what I was going to think before I did. Like it wasn't repeating me. Like I was repeating it. I haven't stopped at a rest area since. I take routes now that avoid them entirely, even if it means longer drives. Even if it means running the tank lower than I'm comfortable with. I'd rather coast in on empty than stop somewhere quiet and dark again. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, usually late at night, usually when it's quiet, I'll think something. Just a normal thought, nothing special. And for half a second, before I even finish thinking it, I get this feeling. Like I've heard it already. Like somewhere, in some empty room, something said it first. We didn't think anything of it at the time. That's the part that still gets me, looking back. How completely normal it felt. It was the second day of a road trip. The kind where you cram 4 people and way too much luggage into one car and just drive until someone needs food or a bathroom, whichever comes first. We'd been on the road since early morning, cutting through this long stretch of desert highway, the kind where the horizon just shimmers and the radio stations fade in and out every 20 minutes. By early afternoon, we were all kind of fried. Too much sun, too much junk food, that specific road trip exhaustion where everyone gets quiet and a little irritable. So when we saw the sign for a gas station in this tiny town, I mean tiny, like a handful of buildings, one gas station, one diner that looked closed, we pulled off without even really discussing it. The gas station itself was unremarkable. 2 pumps, a small convenience store attached, faded paint, that kind of place that's been there for decades and probably will be for decades more. We piled out of the car. 2 of us went to use the bathroom. 1 went inside for snacks, and I stayed with the car to fill the tank. That's when I noticed him. He was standing near the side of the building, sort of in the shade. Not doing anything in particular. Mid-40s maybe. Average height. Wearing a plain gray jacket, despite the heat. Which I remember thinking was a little odd. But people do weird things. Especially in places like that. He had a baseball cap on, pulled down a bit, and he was just standing there. Not on his phone, not smoking, not talking to anyone. Just standing. I gave him a small nod, the kind you give strangers out of habit, and he nodded back. Polite. Forgettable. While I was pumping gas, he walked over, slowly, casually, and asked if we had a phone charger he could borrow. Said his was dead and he needed to call someone about a ride. His voice was completely normal. A little tired sounding, maybe, but nothing that stood out. I told him I thought we had one in the car, and went and grabbed it for him. He thanked me, plugged his phone in, using the little outlet near the pump. Some gas stations have those, and made a call. I wasn't really listening, but I remember catching a few words, something like, "Yeah, still here. No, the car's not ready yet. I'll wait." Normal stuff. The kind of half conversation you tune out completely. My friends came back out around then. Snacks, drinks, the usual chaos of people getting back in a car. The guy unplugged his phone, handed it back to me with another quiet, "Thanks, appreciate it," and went back to standing near the building. We got back in the car and left. I don't think any of us even mentioned him. Why would we? Guy with a dead phone at a gas station asked to borrow a charger, said, "Thanks." That was it. The kind of interaction that happens and is immediately forgotten, filed away under nothing. We drove for another 2 days before we got to where we were going. A trip we'd been planning for months. Lots of stops, lots of pictures, the whole thing. It was a good trip. I genuinely don't think any of us thought about that gas station again. Why would we? It was one stop among probably 15. About 5 days after we got back home, I was scrolling through the news, just half paying attention, the way you do. And a headline caught my eye. Something about a string of incidents along a stretch of highway spanning multiple states over the course of about 2 weeks. I almost scrolled past it. But something, I don't know what, maybe just idle curiosity, made me tap on it. The article was about a man who'd been targeting people at remote gas stations and rest areas along a specific highway corridor. Not robberies, not anything that fit a pattern law enforcement could easily categorize at first. More like he'd be seen interacting briefly with travelers, sometimes asking for small things, a phone charger, directions, change for a vending machine, completely mundane requests. And then, in several cases, those same travelers were later found to have had personal items go missing from their vehicles. Wallets, IDs. In 2 cases, GPS units that had stored addresses, home addresses. In one case, mentioned briefly near the bottom of the article, a family had reported a break-in at their home roughly a week after a road trip. Nothing taken that they noticed immediately, but their home security footage showed someone matching this man's description walking the perimeter of their house at night, clearly checking entry points before leaving without going inside. I sat there staring at my phone for a long moment. There was a photo with the article, grainy, clearly pulled from gas station security footage, black and white, slightly pixelated. Gray jacket, baseball cap, standing near the side of a building. I called my friend immediately, the one who'd been with us, who'd gone inside for snacks. I didn't even say hello properly. I just said, "Do you remember that guy at the gas station?" Second day, the one with the dead phone. There was a pause and then, "Yeah? Why?" I sent her the article. She called back about 2 minutes later, and her voice was different, quieter. That looks like him. That's the jacket." We went back and forth for a while, trying to remember details. What we'd said. What he'd seen. The phone. My phone. The one he'd used to make that call. I went back through my call log from that day, scrolling to find the outgoing call he'd made. It was there. A number I didn't recognize, obviously. A call lasting about 90 seconds, placed from my phone, to a number I'd never seen before or since. I don't know who he called, or what he said beyond what I half overheard. I don't know if it had anything to do with us specifically, or if we were just one stop among many for him that week, one interaction among dozens, most of which probably went nowhere. But here's the detail that I keep coming back to, the one that makes my stomach drop every time I think about it. When my friend went inside for snacks, she'd left her bag in the car, unlocked, because we never locked the car at gas stops, not on a trip like that. Inside that bag was her wallet with her ID, which has her home address on it. Nothing was taken. Nothing happened. As far as we know, nothing ever came of it. No break-in at her place, no strange visitors, nothing. We checked. We checked for weeks afterward, every one of us, looking at our accounts, our homes, anything. But for those few minutes, while he stood there with my phone in his hand, making a call I never heard the other side of, her bag was sitting right there, in plain view, in an unlocked car, a few feet away from him. We have no idea if he looked, We have no idea if that call had anything to do with anything. Statistically, probably not. He was active across multiple states, dozens of stops, most of which the article said led nowhere. We were probably just one more ordinary interaction in a long list of ordinary interactions for him. But probably isn't the same as definitely. And that gap between probably and definitely is where my mind goes every time I think about it. We never told our parents what we found out, not in detail anyway. We didn't want them worrying about something that, in the end, amounted to nothing. No break-in, no theft, no follow-up. Just a 5-minute interaction at a gas station, completely unremarkable in every way, that happened to involve a man who turned out to be something other than what he appeared to be. I think about it sometimes when I'm filling up at a gas station. Now, especially smaller ones, especially if there's someone standing nearby who I don't immediately register as a type. Someone just standing there, doing nothing, waiting. It's such an ordinary thing. People wait at gas stations all the time. Most of them are exactly what they look like. Bored, tired, waiting for a ride, killing time. Most of them, that's the part that stays with me. Not that something happened, because nothing did, not to us, not that we know of. It's that for those few minutes, we had no way of knowing the difference. He looked exactly like nothing. He sounded exactly like nothing. He acted exactly like nothing. And if it weren't for one headline, 5 days later, half scrolled past on a slow afternoon, we never would have known anything at all. We'd have just remembered him as the guy who needed a phone charger. If we remembered him at all. A guy I used to work with told me this years back, when we were both still driving long haul. I've told it a few times since. Usually when someone asks if anything weird ever happens out on the road overnight. Most drivers have a story like this. His just happened to be the one that stuck with me. He'd been hauling a refrigerated trailer, empty on the way back, deadheading to pick up another load and pulled into a truck stop late, way past midnight, somewhere out past the state line. One of those bigger stops, lit up like a small airport. Rows of trucks parked nose to tail, engines idling. That low constant hum you get used to after enough years on the road. He backed into a spot near the end of a row, killed the cab lights, left the engine running for the heat. It was late, fall, cold enough that you didn't want to be without it, and settled in for the night. Standard routine. He said he remembers it being a quiet night. Not many people walking around, just the hum of engines, the occasional door slamming somewhere down the row. He was almost asleep, that in-between state, not quite out yet, when he heard it. 3 knocks, slow, even, coming from behind him. Now, here's the thing he was very specific about, because I asked him the same question everyone asks. Trailer or cab? Trailer. Definitely the trailer. He said the sound was unmistakable. That hollow, metallic resonance you get from someone knocking on the inside of a steel container. Not the cab wall behind his head, not the side of the truck. The back. The trailer doors. His first thought. And he laughed when he told me this part, kind of a humorless laugh, was that someone was messing with him. Some other driver, bored, pulling a prank. It happens. Guys get punchy after enough hours on the road, and knocking on someone's trailer in the middle of the night is exactly the kind of dumb thing a bored trucker might do. So he didn't even get up right away. He just sat there for a second, waiting for a laugh, footsteps walking away, something. 3 more knocks, same pace, same evenness. He said what got him wasn't the sound itself. It was how deliberate it was. Not random banging, not someone testing a latch. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, like someone politely asking to be let in. He got up, grabbed a flashlight, and climbed out of the cab. Cold air hit him immediately. That sharp, dry cold you get out in the open at night. He walked around to the back of the trailer. Doors closed, latched. Padlock still on, exactly where he'd left it. He checked it specifically, because that's the kind of thing you check. He stood there for a minute. Flashlight on the doors, just listening. Nothing. No more knocking, no sound from inside, nothing. He said his next thought was that maybe it was just the trailer settling. Metal contracts in the cold, makes noise sometimes, pops and creaks. He'd heard that plenty of times before. Tried to convince himself that's what it was. But settling doesn't sound like knocking. Settling is random, a pop here, a creak there, no rhythm to it. This had rhythm, 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. He climbed back into the cab, sat there for a bit, told himself he was just tired, probably imagined it. Or it was something outside. Another truck, someone walking by, sound carrying weird in the cold night air. He's been driving long enough to know your brain plays tricks on you at 2 a.m. in an empty truck stop. He was just starting to drift off again when it happened a second time. 3 knocks, same spot, same rhythm. This time he didn't get up right away. He just lay there, completely still, listening. And he said, "This is the part that always gets me." He started counting the gap between knocks, not consciously deciding to, just counting. The way your brain does sometimes when you're tense. Each gap was the same length, almost exactly, like something was keeping time. He got up again, went back out, checked the trailer again. Same as before. Doors closed, lock in place, nothing visibly different. He even walked the full length of the trailer this time. Flashlight sweeping along the bottom edge, checking underneath, checking the other side. Nothing. No one around. The row of parked trucks stretched out in both directions, engines humming, cabs dark, everyone else asleep or pretending to be. He climbed back in. This time, he didn't try to sleep. He just sat there, lights off, engine running for the heat, staring at the back wall of the cab, the wall that separated him from the trailer. Third time, 3 knocks, same spot, same rhythm. But this time, he said, there was something different. After the third knock, that small pause, that gap he'd been counting, there was a fourth sound. Quieter, almost like an exhale. Like something breathing out, slow, right against the metal. He didn't get up that time. He said he just sat there, completely frozen, staring at that wall for what felt like a very long time. No more knocks after that. Just silence. The hum of the engine. His own heartbeat, which he could hear. Which is not something you usually notice. Eventually. He doesn't know how long. Could have been 20 minutes. Could have been an hour. He must have fallen asleep. Because the next thing he remembers is daylight. Truck stop fully awake. Other drivers moving around. Normal sounds. He got out, checked the trailer one more time in full daylight. Doors closed. Lock intact. He actually opened it this time. Unlocked it, swung the doors open, climbed inside with his flashlight, even though there was daylight coming in. Empty. Completely empty. Same as it had been the whole trip. Nothing inside, nothing on the floor, no marks on the walls. Nothing. He shut it back up, got in the cab, and drove off. Didn't think about it too much during the day. Daylight has a way of making nighttime stuff feel distant, less real. He picked up his next load that afternoon, a full trailer this time, and started the drive back. That night, different truck stop, different state. He was more careful about where he parked, pulled into a spot under one of the bright lights, near the entrance, somewhere with more activity. Felt better about it. Settled in. 3 knocks. Same spot. Same rhythm. Except this time, the trailer was full. Loaded. There was no possible way for sound to travel through a fully loaded trailer the way it had through an empty one. Different acoustics entirely, he said. A full trailer absorbs sound. Doesn't resonate the same way, but it sounded exactly the same. 3 knocks, even spacing. That hollow, deliberate quality. He didn't get out that time. He just sat there, and after the 3rd knock, he heard that same quiet exhale sound. Except this time, it sounded closer. Not at the trailer wall, at the wall behind his head, the cab wall. The one that separates the sleeper berth from the outside. He said he didn't sleep at all that night. Just sat up front, engine running, lights on, until it got light outside. No more knocks after that first set. Just that one exhale, close, and then nothing. He finished that delivery, dropped the trailer, and apparently went straight to the dispatcher's office and told them he wanted off long haul. Said he'd take local routes, regional stuff, anything that meant he'd be home most nights. Didn't give a detailed explanation, just said he was done with overnight hauls, effective immediately. He sold that truck about 2 months later, bought a different one, slightly older model, and stuck to routes that kept him within a few hours of home from then on. Never did another overnight long haul again, not once, the whole rest of his career. I asked him once, years later, if he ever figured out what it was, whether he had any theory at all. He just shook his head, said the only thing he ever came up with. And he said it more as a joke than anything, the kind of thing you say to make a story feel like it has an ending, even when it doesn't, was that maybe it wasn't in the trailer at all. Maybe it was asking to get out of something else. And the trailer was just the part of the truck that was easiest to knock on. He laughed when he said it. But it wasn't really a laugh. I think about that sometimes, on long stretches, late at night, especially when I'm parked somewhere quiet and the engine's the only sound. I've never heard anything like what he described, not once, in all my years driving. But I still find myself, every now and then, glancing at the back wall of the cab before I fall asleep. Just checking, just in case. 3 knocks is a very specific thing to imagine. Once you've heard the story, you sort of can't unimagine it. My grandmother only told this story once that I can remember clearly. At a family dinner, years ago, when someone made an offhand joke about taking the causeway home instead of the highway. The room went quiet in this specific way, just before someone changed the subject. Afterward, I asked my mother about it privately, and that's when I heard the whole thing. The causeway my grandmother grew up near was this long, low bridge crossing over a stretch of marshland. Narrow, 2 lanes, with water on both sides close enough that during high tide it would lap right up against the edges of the road. It connected the small town where she grew up to the larger town where people went for work, for shopping, for anything that wasn't available locally. Everyone used it. It was the only practical way across. But there was one rule, unspoken but absolute, in her family. You did not cross that causeway after dark. Didn't matter the reason. If you were on the wrong side when the sun started going down, you stayed the night wherever you were and crossed in the morning. Her parents drilled this into her and her siblings from as early as she could remember. She said when she was young, she never questioned it. It was just one of those family rules, like not whistling in the house or not letting your shoes touch the kitchen table. Things that didn't need explanation because they'd always just been. She assumed every family had rules like that. It wasn't until she was older, 16, 17, that she started to wonder why. Because by then, she'd noticed something. None of the other families in town had this rule. Her friends crossed the causeway at all hours, no problem. It was just her family, just this one specific rule that applied to no one else. She asked her mother about it once, directly. Her mother's answer was short. She just said, "Because of what happened to my sister." My grandmother didn't know she'd had an aunt. No one had ever mentioned a sister before. When she asked more, her mother got quiet, and after a long pause, told her the story. The same story my grandmother would eventually tell my mother, decades later, at that one dinner. This would have been sometime in the 1960s. My grandmother's mother, so my great-great-grandmother, had two daughters. The older one, by a couple of years, had gone across the causeway one evening to visit someone on the other side, a friend, a cousin. The details get fuzzy depending on who's telling it. She was supposed to be back before dark. She wasn't. As the evening went on and she didn't return, the family started to worry. Eventually, my great-great-grandmother and her husband got in their car and drove out toward the causeway, thinking maybe she'd had car trouble or lost track of time and was walking back. They found her about halfway across the causeway, walking, in the dark, on foot, no car in sight. She'd apparently left it somewhere on the other side, though no one ever quite got a straight answer about why. She was walking steadily, calmly, not in any kind of distress, just walking toward home. They stopped the car, and her mother got out, relieved, calling out to her. The daughter looked up, saw them, and walked the rest of the way to the car without saying much. "Just seemed tired," my grandmother said. Quiet. They got her in the car and drove the rest of the way home. Just relieved she was safe, not really pressing her on details that night. There'd be time for that in the morning. When they got home, the daughter went straight to bed, still not saying much. Everyone assumed she was just exhausted from the walk, and let her be. The next morning, my grandmother said, her mother went to wake her daughter for breakfast and found two girls in the bed, identical, both asleep, both. When they woke up, confused and startled by the commotion, completely certain they were the only daughter the family had. Both responded to the same name. Both had the same memories, as far as anyone could tell in those first chaotic minutes. Same childhood, same everything, right up until the previous evening, when their accounts diverged completely. One of them remembered going to visit her friend, staying later than planned, and then walking home across the causeway in the dark, because she'd missed the last ride back. The other one remembered staying home that entire evening, never left the house. Was getting ready for bed when she heard the commotion of her parents coming home with someone. Neither of them, my grandmother said, seemed to be lying. Both were equally distressed, equally confused, both certain of their own version, and both. This is the detail that always stuck with me, completely unable to explain the other girl's existence. Not who are you, exactly. More like, they each seemed to genuinely not register the other as strange. Like, some part of each of them simply accepted that this was now how things were, even while another part of them, was clearly panicking about it. My grandmother said the family never talked about it openly after that. Not to neighbors, not to extended family, not really even amongst themselves, beyond what was strictly necessary. The two girls grew up together, in the same house, treated, outwardly, at least as twins. As far as anyone in the wider community knew, that's exactly what they were, twins. No one outside the immediate family ever knew otherwise. But within the family, there was always this awareness. My grandmother said her mother, one of the twins, though she never said which one, and my grandmother never asked, would occasionally have moments where she'd just stop, mid-sentence, mid-tasked, and stare off toward the direction of the causeway for just a few seconds before continuing whatever she was doing like nothing happened. And every single evening, without fail, before dark, my great-great-grandmother would check that both daughters were home. Not just, are you home in a general sense. She'd physically locate both of them in the same room if possible, before the sun went down. Every night. For years. My grandmother said even when they were adults, even after they'd married and had their own families, their mother would still call them every evening, just to hear both their voices before dark. The rule about the causeway, never cross after dark, no exceptions, applied to every descendant after that. My grandmother grew up with it. Her children grew up with it. Though, by then it had softened into more of a superstition, a just don't, it's bad luck kind of thing. The actual story behind it fading with each generation. My mother told me she only heard the full version once, the same dinner I did. Actually, she'd grown up with the rule but never the explanation. Same as my grandmother had at that age. When I asked my grandmother, later, if she ever found out which of the two women, which twin, was her actual mother, the original daughter, versus whoever the other one was, she said she didn't know. Said it had never been something anyone in the family discussed, generation to generation. Just not a thing you brought up. I asked her if she thought it was true, the whole story. She didn't really answer that directly. She just said that growing up, even though she didn't know the reason, she always felt a kind of pull toward that causeway. In the evenings, finds? Like something out there was aware, somehow, of the rule and of people who might break it. She said she crossed it exactly once after dark when she was a teenager on a dare with friends. Drove across, fast, windows up, radio off, nobody saying a word the whole way. Nothing happened, she said. No incident, no figure on the road, nothing dramatic. But she said when they got to the other side, all four of them in the car felt the exact same thing, independently, without discussing it until much later. The unmistakable sense that there had been a fifth person in the car during that crossing. Not seen, not heard, just felt. A presence in the back seat between two of her friends that hadn't been there when they left and wasn't there when they arrived. She never crossed it after dark again. Not once, for the rest of her life. The causeway doesn't exist anymore, not in its original form. It was replaced decades ago with a modern bridge, wider, better lit, nothing like the narrow strip of road it used to be. My grandmother passed a few years back, and, as far as I know, none of us have ever felt anything unusual crossing the new bridge, day or night. But we still don't cross it after dark if we can avoid it. No one's ever explained why, not really, not to the younger ones in the family. It's just understood, the same way it was understood for my grandmother, before she knew the reason either. Some nights, when I'm driving home late and that bridge is the short route, I'll take the long way instead. Even though it adds time, even though there's a perfectly good, well-lit, modern bridge sitting right there, I tell myself it's just habit. Something passed down, meaningless by now, but I still do it. Every time. If any of these stories made you feel something, that's exactly why we share them. Whether you believe them or not, these accounts come from people who lived through moments they still can't explain. Subscribe to Unheard Fears for more true road trip horror stories. Hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And let us know in the comments which story unsettled you the most.